It's been 2,500 years, but one name is still remembered as a symbol of power, ambition, and conquest, and that name is Alexander the Great, a conqueror who changed the course of the world in his short life. At the age of 20, after taking over the throne, Alexander was captured from Greece to Egypt, Persia, and India in a few years. At that time, when communication was slow, maps were incomplete and travel took months or years, Alexander had established the largest empire in history. He made such a cocktail of Greek philosophy, Persian administration, and Eastern traditions that the world was amazed. How did Alexander do all this? Was he really great? Or was he just an ambitious young king who could not win himself by winning everything? Let's find out in today's video. Alexander was born in 356 BC in the capital of ancient Greece, Pella, Macedonia. Alexander's father was Philip II, who was the king of Macedon, and his mother's name was Olympias, who was one of Philip's 7 wives. Because Alexander was a prince, he got all the privileges that a king's son gets. Plutarch writes in his book The Life of Alexander that private tutors were kept for Alexander's studies, and one of them was Leonidas, who was a relative of Philip. Leonidas was a strict teacher, and he ruthlessly trained Alexander in combat, horse riding, and military tactics. A few years later, another teacher was appointed, whose name was Lysimachus, and he trained Alexander in music and poetry and also taught him to read and write. When Alexander was only 10 years old, he brought a trader horse to his father. But no one was able to control the horse, so Philip was about to refuse the trader when Alexander came forward and said that he could control the horse. Hearing this, Philip was a little surprised, but he was also a little curious and wanted to know if Alexander really had the capability to do this, so he gave permission to Alexander. Then Alexander approached the horse and spoke to it slowly, then he let it go and slowly climbed on it and started riding it comfortably. Seeing this scene, Philip was so impressed that he said to Alexander, "My son, seek a kingdom worthy of yourself. Macedonia is too small for you." After this, he bought the horse and named it Bucephalus. This is the horse on which Alexander won many battles. After this, when Alexander was 13 years old, his training went to a different level when Philip hired Aristotle, the greatest philosopher in history. Aristotle gave daily lessons to Alexander in the Temple of Nymphs located in Mysa. Here Alexander studied with other royal children, many of whom became his good friends and later became his generals. Aristotle gave lessons in religion, art, logic, and philosophy to Alexander, and this training impressed King Philip so much that he rebuilt the hometown of Aristotle, Stagira, which was destroyed in a war, and gave freedom to all the slaves there. Alexander's first challenge came when he was only 16 years old. King Philip had declared war on the Byzantine kingdom, and he was going to lead an army in battle. So he left Macedonia to Alexander and set out for battle. For 16-year-old Alexander, this was a huge responsibility that people thought to take advantage of. A European tribe named Thracian Madi started a rebellion against Macedonia, thinking that Alexander's 16-year-old underkingdom has become weak. He soon had to suffer the consequence of underestimating Alexander when Alexander sent an army and drove him out of his territory and settled other Greek citizens there and named it Alexandropolis. When King Philip returned from the battle and saw how Alexander handled this revolt, he was very impressed. After this, he gave Alexander the responsibility of allotting his own small army and handling the potential future revolts of the kingdom. For the next 3 years, Alexander joined his father in his military campaigns. In this campaign, he first defeated the kingdoms of Alatia and Amphissa, and then faced the army of Athens and Thebes in Chaeronea. And this is where the Battle of Chaeronea began. Philip decided that he would command the right wing of his army and Alexander's left wing, which he led in an excellent way and won the battle, after which the majority of Greece came under the control of Philip. After succeeding in Greece, Philip's eyes fell on the Persian Empire, and this time he again gave Alexander the responsibility of managing his kingdom. And Alexander fulfilled this responsibility well again. When Philip returned, he decided to get married again. His new wife's name was Cleopatra Eurydice. This marriage pushed Alexander's dream of becoming the next king a little because Cleopatra was a pure Macedonian and Alexander was half Macedonian because his mother was not from Macedonia, and this meant that if Cleopatra had a son, he would become the successor of the throne before Alexander. Plutarch writes in his book that during the wedding, Cleopatra's uncle Attalus picked up a glass of wine and wished that Cleopatra would have a son soon so that Macedonia would get a true Macedonian king. Hearing this, Alexander was so angry that he threw his cup over Attalus and shouted, "You villain, what am I then? A bastard." Seeing his father sitting quietly, Alexander was so hurt that he took his mother to Epirus, where his uncle King Alexander I lived. There in Macedonia, King Philip also had a son from Cleopatra, but he was very saddened by Alexander's departure. Actually, he did not want to remove Alexander from his successor's position. Then he sent a message to convince Alexander and gave him orders to return, and Alexander returned to Macedonia on these orders. But after this, there was no longer that old equation between the two. After this, Philip fixed his daughter's marriage with Alexander's uncle and his own brother-in-law, king of Epirus. And the day of the wedding also arrived. The wedding began, and as soon as King Philip entered the theater, one of his bodyguards suddenly stabbed him, causing his death on the spot. There are many conflicting sources of the reason for this assassination, but according to historian Diodorus, the bodyguard who committed the assassination was called Pausanias of Orestes. And apparently, the men of Attalus had exploited him, and he wanted King Philip to punish those people, but this did not happen. And because of not getting justice, he took this extreme step. After the death of King Philip, Alexander was declared the king of Macedonia. Alexander was very saddened by his father's death, but he also knew that if he did not take a tough decision, his life could also be lost. After this, Alexander took some such decisions that people's souls trembled. According to historian Diodorus, Alexander first met his mother and killed Philip's new wife Cleopatra and his newborn child. At that time, Attalus was in Asia Minor, so Alexander sent execution orders there and killed him. And then killed all his political rivals one by one. After this, as soon as the news spread that there was no longer a strong and dominant king like Philip, and now his 20-year-old son has become king. So in the kingdom, revolts began again, like the recently conquered Athens and Thebes states, which felt that they could become independent again. Without listening to his advisors, Alexander himself left with an army of 3,000 soldiers to end these revolts. First of all, he reached Thebes and destroyed the entire city. And after this, Alexander's fear began to be seen in the remaining kingdoms, and the revolts began to cool down. After this, Alexander was welcomed in any state he went to without opposition, and he established himself as a strong ruler. But Alexander was not going to be happy with this. Aristotle's teachings had made him ambitious since childhood, and now that he had become king, he had to rule the whole world. The year was 334 BC. Alexander left Greece to his trusted military general Antipater and left for Persia with an army of 40,000 soldiers. Alexander believed that the Persian kingdom was a gift from God. Alexander and his army had to face the first resistance in Persia in the Battle of Granicus River. This river was a huge obstacle for Alexander's army. His military general Memnon of Rhodes was leading the Persian army. He positioned his army, which was about half of Alexander's army, around the Granicus River and began to wait for Alexander's army. Alexander used a wedge-shaped assault tactic to show his military excellence. He landed his army in the river and directly attacked the center of the Persian army. According to some sources, Alexander himself landed in the battle and killed many Persian soldiers. One soldier even attacked him with an axe, which almost killed him. But he survived, and Alexander won this battle because of his superior army. In this battle, about 4,000 soldiers of the Persian army were killed, and the Greek casualties were only around 50, after which the remaining Persian soldiers had to flee from there. Some Persian soldiers were caught, and some of them were in the Greek army. Alexander declared them traitors and killed them all. After this, Alexander captured the capital Sardis of Lydia Kingdom and reached the Ionian coast, where people welcomed him without opposition. Alexander told the people here that they are now free from Persian rule and can now live in a democratic way. After this, he marched ahead and reached Halicarnassus, which was a coastal fort city. It was also an important naval base of the Persian kingdom. It had large walls that were difficult to cross. After losing the Battle of Granicus, Memnon of Rhodes stayed here with his army. Alexander surrounded this fort with his army. Then he built towers, ramps and catapults outside the fort and began to attack. In response to this, the Persians attacked secretly at night and tried to destroy Alexander's equipment, but this was not very successful. According to A.B. Bosworth, the siege lasted for about 2 months. After this, the Persians could not stop these attacks anymore and then set fire to the city on the orders of Memnon of Rhodes and fled from the sea. After this, Alexander captured Halicarnassus and made the original Queen Ada of Caria, from whom this city was taken, queen again. In return, Ada adopted Alexander, who indirectly captured Halicarnassus. After this, Alexander reached the capital Phrygia of Gordium, and here, according to some Greek legends, some people took Alexander to a shrine there, where a chariot was tied to a rope in a very complex way, which turned it into a complicated knot. Then they told Alexander that whoever opens this knot will become the ruler of Asia. After hearing this, Alexander took out his sword and cut the rope in one swing. After this, Alexander moved towards the south with his army, where now he was going to face a big army. And this was the army of Darius III, who was the king of the Achaemenid Empire of Persia. Then there was a battle between the two, which is called the Battle of Issus. Despite being a small army compared to Darius's army, Alexander's tactical skills and brave approach won him in this battle, after which Darius had to leave his entire kingdom and run away from there. After this, Alexander's fear increased so much that as soon as he brought his army to a kingdom, that kingdom surrendered itself. By 332 BC, Alexander had captured Syria and Levant. After this, Alexander's eyes fell on Tyre, which was an island on the Mediterranean coast. It was difficult to conquer this island because of the water and its large walls. First, Alexander surrounded this island for 7 months. Then, by giving an example of his brilliance, he built a path filled with stones in the water from his army, and the army entered the island. According to historian Arrian of Nicomedia, after waiting for months, Alexander got so angry that as soon as he entered the island, he massacred 8,000 people. After this, Alexander moved towards Egypt with his army, and in this route, all the kingdoms surrendered. But a kingdom showed the courage to not give up, and that kingdom was Gaza at that time, which was located on a mountain. It was very difficult to climb here and enter the city, but Alexander decided that he had to capture Gaza. His army tried to enter the city 3 times, but they failed. Then, in the last attempt, they entered the city. During this time, many of Alexander's soldiers were killed. Alexander himself suffered a serious injury on his shoulder. After this, Alexander left for Egypt, where people welcomed him as their son of God and liberator and considered him like their pharaoh. Here he established Alexandria city, which was going to become a very big trading center in the future. After Egypt, he left for Alexander Babylon, which was the capital of Persia, and here King Darius took refuge after losing the battle. Alexander still had 47,000 soldiers, but some historians believe that Darius had an army of 10 lakh soldiers in Babylon. In 331 BC, both armies faced each other in Gaugamela. In the front line of his army, Darius placed chariots and elephants so that he could crush Alexander's army. In response to this, Alexander put his troops ahead so that they could aim at the chariots. Darius himself was in a chariot, and during the battle, he fell off his chariot, and then sitting on a horse, he ran away from the battle again. Seeing this, his soldiers also started running away, and Alexander won the battle again. After this, Alexander captured other cities like Susa and Persepolis and looted everything there. Then he found Darius and decided to kill him so that Darius could not make any more moves against him. But before this, a special man of Darius, Bessus, killed him and took his place. After this, Alexander continued to move forward in Asia in search of Bessus, and during this time, he established many cities in his name. Eventually, Bessus was betrayed by his generals and handed over to Alexander, and he was killed. During this campaign, in 327 BC, Alexander captured Bactria, and to make strong alliances in this region, he married the daughter of the ruler of Bactria, Roxana. Now, Alexander's eyes were on India. First of all, he sent delegates and gave orders to surrender the Indian kings. Some small kingdoms surrendered, and those who refused had to face Alexander's violent army. Their villages and cities were burnt with great brutality. After this, Alexander got the most challenging opposition from the king of Punjab, Porus, who was the king of the Paurava kingdom. Then the Battle of Hydaspes took place between the two armies. Arrian of Nicomedia writes in his book, Anabasis Alexandria, that Alexander won this battle, after which Porus was captured. But during the battle, Alexander was so impressed with Porus's military tactics and bravery that he offered Porus co-rulership. Then a deal was made between the two, in which it was decided that Alexander would be the new king of Paurava, but Porus would rule under him. After this, Alexander had conquered more territory than any ruler in history, but his ambition was still not less, and he wanted to take the army and move ahead in India. But his army battles were getting tired while fighting, so he refused to go ahead, due to which revolts started in the army. A general of Alexander told him that the soldiers are yearning to see their families, their children, and their homeland. Hearing this, Alexander felt sympathy for his soldiers and decided to go back. But Alexander was forced by his habit, and even while returning, he kept capturing small villages. After this, when Alexander returned to Persia, people welcomed him by calling him the King of Kings. Alexander liked Persian customs very much, and he started adapting Persian habits and dressing, which Alexander's generals found very strange. While returning from here, Alexander went to his first captured regions and executed his own generals, who were involved in corruption and injustice. In 324 BC, Alexander reached the Susa region of Persia, where he got his generals and Persian noblewomen mass married to strengthen relations with Persia. He himself married two royal Persian women named Ira and Parasates. However, Alexander had 3 wives, some of whom were historians like Robin Lane Fox and Paul Cartledge, who were also related to Alexander's men, especially to his closest friend Hephaestion. After this, Alexander reached Babylon and decided to stay there for a few days. Here, he started making a plan to conquer Alexander Arabia. During this time, Alexander used to party every day and used to drink a lot. On the night of 1st June 323 BC, Alexander came to his room in a state of intoxication after drinking in a party and went to sleep. At night, he suddenly had a very high fever and his condition began to deteriorate. According to historian Arrian, Alexander's health deteriorated for the next 12 days. All efforts were being made to save him, but no medicine worked, and in the end, Alexander died at the age of 32. Some sources also claim that someone had poisoned Alexander. The entire empire was in shock with the death of the world's greatest king. People could not believe that such a strong and brave king died at such a young age. Alexander was buried in Alexandria. In the coming centuries, Alexander's name began to be associated with bravery, and many emperors came to his grave to pay homage to him from afar. It is said that the Roman Emperor Augustus also came to see his body. Today, the location of Alexander's tomb has remained a mystery of the world. It takes a lot of hard work and time to make such videos. Therefore, your support